Before we begin, you already have it. The influence, the authority, the kind of presence that makes people lean in when you speak, trust your judgment before you've explained it, and feel without being told that someone grounded and real is in the room. You already have it. But something is in the way. Not a missing credential, not a personality flaw, not a quality leaders you admire were born with, and you weren't. What's in the way is noise, clutter. The accumulated weight of beliefs that were never yours to carry, habits that drain more than they build, and a version of being productive that has quietly exhausted the very clarity your leadership depends on. This audiobook is not about adding more. It is about removing what's in the way so what has always been there can finally come through. Real influence isn't something you build, it's something you discover. A little more signal, a little more of the leader you were always meant to be. Let's begin. The space where influence lives. Influence. It's one of those words that follows leaders everywhere, boardrooms, podcasts, performance reviews. Everyone wants more of it, and most people spend enormous energy chasing it. And yet the leaders who actually have it, the ones whose words still echo among the people they led years after those people moved on, the ones who walk into a room and change its temperature without a word, rarely get there by chasing it at all. They got there by clearing the way. Maybe you picked up this audiobook because you're already leading a team, a business, a community, a family, and something feels slightly off. Like you're working harder than the results justify. Like you're saying the right things, but they're not landing as you intend. Like there's a version of your leadership you can almost see, just beyond where you are. Or maybe you're not yet in the role you're working toward and you sense correctly that what will get you there isn't more information. It's something deeper, something that must be cleared before it can be built. Wherever you're starting, you're in the right place. Over the past decade, I've sat with leaders of every kind, across industries, at every stage, in wildly different contexts. But the thread running through every person who left a lasting mark, they had made room, not just in their schedules, in their minds, their communication, their relationships, and their sense of what they were actually here to do. They had let go of the noise, the performance, the endless proving, and what stepped forward in that space was quiet, clear, and unmistakably powerful. That's what we're building together here. Not a louder voice, not a more polished persona, not tactics to impress people you haven't even met yet. The real thing, the thing that was always beneath, waiting. We'll move through chapters, each focused on decluttering a different area of your leadership, your mindset, your environment, your relationships, your time, your communication, your goals, your stress, and your legacy. In each chapter, I'll ask you the same essential question, but in a different way. What do you need to release to become who you already are? Keep something nearby to write with, not just for notes for the lines that hit home, the questions that feel uncomfortably specific. Those are the ones worth slowing down for. All right, let's start at the very beginning, at the place where all influence either lives or dies. Declutter your mindset for unshakable confidence. Before anything else changes, before people respond to you differently, before rooms feel different when you enter them, before your words carry the weight you want, your mind has to change first. Not your skills, not your strategy, your mind. The most important thing to understand about the mind is this: it rarely runs on the truth. It runs on a story. A story built from every piece of feedback you've ever received, every failure that stung a little too long, and every room where you felt like the least qualified person present. Those experiences leave residue, and that residue, over time, hardens into what we call limiting beliefs. Limiting beliefs are quiet. They don't arrive with labels that read, "Warning, this thought is holding you back." They dress up as logic, as caution, as realism. They say things like, "I'm not quite ready yet. Others are better positioned for this than I am." If I put myself forward and fall short, I won't recover. I need one more credential, one more year, and one more thing in place. Recognize any of those? They're not your truth. They're a loop. A loop that formed in a moment of vulnerability and then kept playing quietly, consistently, in the background of every opportunity you almost took. Here's the first and most important practice in this entire audiobook. Name it. Take a moment this week today, if you can, to reflect on a recent situation when you held back. You didn't speak up, didn't step forward, didn't raise your hand, and ask yourself honestly, what belief underlies that hesitation? Write it down. Just naming it does something remarkable. It shifts the belief from law to a loop, and a loop can be interrupted. Then reframe it. Not with hollow optimism, with something actually true. I don't know enough yet becomes I'm learning constantly, and what I bring right now already matters. I might fail becomes I can adjust. Action gives me information that waiting never will. This is the work of training your mind to default to capability rather than fear. And every time you do it, your leadership becomes a little less effortful, a little more natural, and a little more of you. Eliminating decision fatigue. The second piece of mental clutter most leaders never consider addressing. The staggering volume of small decisions that drain their cognitive fuel every day. Your brain makes thousands of micro decisions from the moment you wake up. What to wear, what to eat first, which email to open, how to respond to this message, whether to take this meeting. Individually, none of these costs much. But stacked together by midday, you've already spent significant mental energy on decisions that have nothing to do with your most important work. And when that genuinely important decision arrives, you're meeting it with a depleted battery. The leaders you most admire aren't more disciplined than you. In many cases, they make fewer pointless decisions. They've built what I call decision anchors, small systems and structures that eliminate guesswork in the predictable parts of their day. A consistent morning structure, a simplified wardrobe, templates for the emails you send each week, 3 non-negotiable priorities written down before the day begins. These aren't constraints, they're freedoms. Every routine you build around the ordinary creates reserve energy for the extraordinary, for the decisions that actually shape your leadership. Moving through analysis paralysis. And then there is the trap that catches nearly every high performer. At some point, the loop of over-analysis, over-preparation, and over-refinement that masquerades as diligence and, in truth, is fear wearing a very convincing disguise. You've been there. The decision sits in front of you. You've gathered information. You understand the landscape, but your mind keeps circling, what if this outcome? What about that variable? Have I thought through every possibility? The longer the loop runs, the heavier the decision feels. This is perfectionism at work. Perfectionism has exactly one function: to keep you safe from the discomfort of imperfect action. The cost? Everything imperfect action would have taught you, built for you, and opened for you. The shift is simple, though not always easy. Ask yourself one clear question. Do I have enough information to take a solid first step? If yes, take it. If not, set a specific time limit for gathering more, then decide anyway. Not because you'll definitely be right, because clarity comes through action, not through endless deliberation. Because you can adjust. Because the path reveals itself to those who are actually walking it. Leadership isn't fueled by hustle. It's grounded in focus. Building the mindset that holds it all. Once you begin clearing mental clutter, something quietly shifts. A little more space, a little more ease, a little more steadiness in moments that used to knock you sideways. But clearing alone isn't the full picture. What you build in that cleared space matters just as much. 3 practices form the foundation. First, choose purpose over perfection. When perfectionism is driving, you are always waiting to feel ready, and waiting for the right moment. You are waiting for certainty that leadership doesn't come with. But when purpose is driving, you move. Not recklessly with intention. You stop performing readiness and start acting from it. The people around you feel the difference immediately because purpose creates safety that perfection never can. Second, cultivate emotional discipline. Every leader at some point faces a moment when the noise gets loud, stress spikes, emotions run high, and everything demands a response at once. What determines your influence in that moment is not how much you know. It's how quickly you can return to yourself. That capacity to pause before reacting, to choose your response deliberately, to stay grounded in a storm is what emotional discipline means. Not suppressing what you feel, knowing yourself well enough not to be ambushed by it. Third, build a growth-oriented daily rhythm. Dramatic turning points don't shape your mindset. It's shaped morning by morning, choice by choice, in the 100 quiet moments no one else sees. A brief journal practice before the day begins, a few minutes of stillness between calls, an honest reflection at the end of the day. Where did I lead from my values today, and where did I drift? These aren't luxury habits for people with extra time. They are the foundation on which everything else is built. 3 tools that make all of this concrete. Daily journaling, not to reflect, but to see yourself clearly. 5 minutes of meditation, not to empty your mind, but to practice returning to the present when it wanders. And the 5-second rule from Mel Robbins. When you feel the instinct to act, to speak up, to make the call, to take the step, count down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Then move. That countdown interrupts the hesitation reflex before it can talk you out of doing what you know you need to do. Together, these practices don't just change how you think. They change how you show up in every room, every conversation, every moment of pressure. Quietly, steadily, irreversibly. Declutter your environment to command authority. Your mind shapes your environment, but your environment shapes your mind right back. This is not a metaphor. Decades of research in environmental psychology confirm it. The physical spaces we inhabit directly affect our cognitive performance, emotional regulation, and the quality of our decisions. A cluttered space elevates stress hormones. A disordered desk scatters attention. An environment that feels chaotic signals to your nervous system that the situation is chaotic, regardless of whether it actually is. And if your environment communicates chaos, that is what your presence projects before you've said a single word. The good news is that this works just as effectively in the other direction. Your physical workspace. Start with where you work. Your workspace is not just a location, it is a launch pad where decisions are made, strategy is developed, and vision is held. When that space is disordered, your mind must expend energy managing the environment before it can focus fully on the work. Here's the practice. Clear everything, completely. Start with an empty surface and bring back only what you actually use and what carries meaning. Create simple zones, one for deep, focused work, one for communication and logistics, and one for planning. Give everything a place so your brain doesn't have to remember where it is. Watch for visual noise, the accumulation of random objects, stacked papers, and tech you never use that hums quietly in the background of your awareness. Replace it with calm, neutral colors, natural materials where possible, and 1 or 2 objects that genuinely anchor you to why this work matters. When your space is clear, your thinking is clearer. The people who walk into that space feel the difference, even if they can't name it. Your environment is already communicating something. Make it communicate what you truly mean. Minimalism as leadership philosophy. Minimalism is often misunderstood as empty or cold. But true minimalism, the kind that actually supports great leadership, is not about removing for its own sake. It is about intention. It is the decision that only what genuinely serves you earns a place in your environment. A well-edited space says something about the person in it. It says, I am clear about what matters. 100 competing stimuli do not scatter me. I have enough self-awareness to know what I need and enough discipline to remove what I don't. That is exactly what authority looks like before anyone opens their mouth. Practically, lean into calm tones and open space. Bring in light wherever you can. It measurably elevates mood and cognitive performance. Display one thing that reflects who you are, such as a quote that grounds you, an object that connects you to your purpose, or a photograph that reminds you why any of this matters. Let your space feel like an extension of how you lead. Intentional, clear, grounded. When people step into it, they step into your values before you've said a word. Your physical presence. Your body is part of your environment. How you carry yourself, your posture, your movement, your eye contact, and the pace at which you speak and move is the most immediate and powerful part of your environment. Research by social psychologist Amy Cuddy confirms what intuition already knows. The way we hold our bodies influences how we think and feel, not just how others perceive us. An open, grounded physical stance, feet shoulder-width apart, shoulders relaxed and back, chin level, arms uncrossed, signals to your nervous system that you are safe, capable, and present. Your mindset follows your body's lead. People around you read your physical presence in the first seconds before they've processed a single word. This is not about performance. It is about alignment, ensuring your outside matches the clarity you cultivate inside. When your presence and message are congruent, trust builds faster than any perfectly worded pitch could. The digital environment. In a world where much of leadership now happens across screens, the digital environment carries the same weight as the physical one, and it gets cluttered just as easily, just as quietly, and often more completely. The unread emails number in the hundreds. The notifications arrive every few minutes, regardless of what you're working on. The tabs stay open just in case. The saved files you are going to sort through. Every one of these is a quiet leak in your attention. And attention, for a leader, is not just a personal resource, it is the raw material of influence. Reclaim it deliberately. Unsubscribe aggressively from what you don't read. Set specific times to check email, and outside those times, close the tab. Turn off every notification that isn't genuinely time-sensitive. Use automation tools to handle what repeats, scheduling, standard replies, and file organization. What you take off your plate with systems is energy returned to the work only you can do. Build a weekly digital reset. Set aside 30 minutes a Friday afternoon or a Sunday evening to clear your desktop, archive completed items, review what's ahead, and intentionally reconnect with your priorities. This single practice, done consistently, prevents the slow creep of digital disorder that erodes focus and presence over time. Your environment, physical, personal, and digital, is part of your leadership practice. It is always communicating. The question is whether you are the one deciding what it communicates. Declutter relationships to amplify influence. Influence doesn't grow in isolation. It grows through relationships. Through the daily accumulation of conversations, collaborations, and connections that either strengthen your clarity or quietly and steadily erode it. Just as clutter in your environment can drain your focus without you noticing, misaligned or energy-draining relationships do the same. They don't always announce themselves. They slowly make you feel smaller, more guarded, more careful, less like yourself. This chapter is not about cutting people off. It is about being honest, perhaps for the first time, about who has access to your energy and what that access is costing you. Identifying energy-draining relationships. Every relationship either adds to your energy or draws from it. As a leader, your capacity to be present, clear, and grounded is your most valuable resource. This means the people who consistently leave you feeling drained, not challenged, but genuinely depleted are, in a very real sense, depleting the asset your leadership depends on. These relationships don't always look dramatic from the outside. Sometimes they show up as the colleague who meets every idea with immediate skepticism, the friend whose conversations always circle back to complaint, never to possibility, the person who needs your emotional management far more than they ever offer their own. The connection you maintain entirely out of obligation, an obligation that costs you more each time than it returns. Ask yourself the three most revealing questions in this space. With whom do I feel genuinely lighter after spending time? Whom do I find myself quietly dreading before we connect? After which conversations do I feel like I have less of myself than I did before? These questions are not about judging anyone. They are about clarity. From clarity, you have real choices, not the automatic repetition of obligation, but genuine discernment about where your energy goes and why. Those choices fall along a spectrum. You can shift the dynamic, change how you show up in the relationship. You can limit contact without severing it. You can have an honest conversation that fundamentally changes the relationship. Or, when the time comes, you can let it end with care, respect, and without guilt. Building strategic alliances. As you make space by stepping back from what drains you, something opens room for the relationships that truly multiply your capacity, clarity, and impact. I call these strategic alliances, not in the coldly transactional sense of that phrase, but in its deepest meaning. These are people who share your values, who celebrate your growth without competing, who challenge you with genuine care, who bring perspectives that expand yours rather than simply confirming them, who are as committed to becoming as you are. Think of your relational ecosystem as needing 4 elements. Mentors, people who have walked further along the road and will speak honestly about what they've seen. Peers, people at a similar stage of growth who walk alongside you, so you don't have to walk alone. Mentees, people you are invested in lifting, because there is a clarity that only comes from giving away what you've learned. And connectors, people who expand your world into territory you wouldn't reach on your own. These relationships don't build themselves. They require intentional cultivation, reaching out with genuine purpose, asking real questions, offering value before you need it, and giving conversations time to deepen beyond the surface. When they are built, they become one of the most durable foundations your leadership will ever stand on. Setting boundaries with confidence. Boundaries are not walls. A boundary is simply a clear statement of what you will and won't do, and what you will and won't accept, communicated with kindness and upheld with consistency. Most of us were not taught to set boundaries easily. We were taught to be agreeable, available, and accommodating. In many contexts, those are genuinely good things. But when accommodation becomes automatic, when you say yes out of reflex, fear, or discomfort at disappointing someone, it stops being generosity and becomes self-abandonment. Self-abandoned leaders cannot lead anyone else well. The practice is straightforward, even if the execution isn't. Know your limits, the behaviors and patterns that consistently leave you feeling resentful or depleted. Communicate them clearly and without over-justifying. Hold them when they're tested, especially when it's uncomfortable. And let go of responsibility for how others feel about your limits. You are not responsible for their reaction. You are responsible for leading yourself with integrity. People who genuinely respect you will honor your boundaries. People who consistently push against them are giving you essential information about the relationship's nature. Communication and conflict within relationships. At the heart of every relationship is communication, and like everything else we're covering, communication can be cluttered or clear. The single most powerful communication practice for building influence is also the one most leaders underinvest in: listening, not listening while preparing your reply. and not listening to confirm what you already think, but genuinely setting aside your agenda, turning toward the other person, and allowing what they are actually saying to reach you fully, unhurriedly. This kind of listening is rare. In a world where most people feel talked over or half heard, offering your full attention to someone is one of the most powerful acts of leadership you can practice. It communicates respect, safety, and genuine care faster and more durably than any perfectly crafted speech. And when conflict arises, because it will in any relationship worth having, the leaders who navigate it well are not the ones who avoid it or win it. They are the ones who approach it with curiosity rather than defensiveness. They ask what the other person actually needs before asserting their own needs. They look for the shared interest beneath the apparent disagreement and negotiate from that common ground rather than from opposing positions. Not every conflict will resolve neatly. Not every broken trust can be rebuilt. But the leaders who learn to move through conflict with honesty and care rather than around it with avoidance and performance are the leaders whose influence endures because people remember with remarkable clarity how it felt to be handled well during a difficult moment. Declutter time to prioritize legacy. Your calendar is more honest than your resume is. Your resume shows what you've achieved. Your calendar shows what you actually value, not what you say you value, what you consistently give your irreplaceable hours to. For most leaders, when they look at that calendar with genuine honesty, there is a gap, a significant one, between the legacy they say they're building and how the weeks are actually spent. This chapter is about closing that gap, not by doing more, by doing what truly matters with greater intention, greater clarity, and significantly less of what has quietly been consuming your best energy without your full permission. The time audit. The foundation of everything in this chapter is simple and uncomfortable. Track your time for 1 week, completely honestly, in 15 to 30-minute increments. Log not what you meant to do or what sounds good, but what actually happened. Every meeting, every email check, every conversation, every distraction, every task that felt productive, and every one that genuinely was. Then look at the data. Ask the revealing questions. How much of this time was spent on work only I can do, work that draws on my specific expertise, relationships, and judgment? How much was spent on tasks that drained me without advancing anything meaningful? How much was I reacting to other people's priorities rather than leading from my own? Most leaders who complete this exercise make a startling discovery. They find hidden hours, sometimes many buried in low-value activities that had disguised themselves as necessary. That discovery is not a reason for self-judgment. It is an invitation to redesign. The 80/20 reality. The 80/20 principle that roughly 20% of your efforts generate roughly 80% of your results is more than a statistical curiosity. Applied to leadership, it poses a challenge. What is your actual 20%? What specific activities, the conversations, the decisions, the creative work, the relationship building, generate the disproportionate majority of your impact? Can you name them clearly? Are those activities protected on your calendar, or are they the first to be displaced when something urgent arrives? High-impact work has a frustrating trait. It rarely feels urgent. Strategy doesn't ping you. Deep thinking doesn't have a deadline. The mentorship conversation that will shape someone's career for the next decade doesn't show up in your task manager. And because it doesn't demand your attention, it gets repeatedly displaced by what does: the inbox, the meetings, the reactive work that is always pressing and rarely important. Start each week by identifying your 3 to 5 highest leverage activities, the work that, if done well, would make this week matter regardless of everything else. Block time for those activities first. Treat those blocks as non-negotiable. as you would a conversation with someone you deeply respect, and then, and only then, fill in the rest. Delegation and the art of letting go. One of the most common and costly patterns among high-performing leaders, holding on to work they should have let go of long ago. There are understandable reasons for this. It is often faster to do something yourself than to explain it. You know it will be done to your standard if you do it. There is a sense of control in keeping things in your own hands. But this pattern has an invisible cost that compounds over time. It prevents your team from growing, prevents you from operating at the level your leadership actually requires, and quietly communicates, however unintentionally, that you don't trust the people around you. Delegation, done well, is one of the highest leverage acts a leader can perform. Be clear about what success looks like. Match the task to the person who will grow from it. Share the why. Context and meaning motivate far better than instruction alone. Then let go. Check in at agreed-upon points, not constantly. Support rather than supervise. And resist the impulse to correct minor deviations from how you would have done it, because there is more than one way to do it well. Every task you delegate thoughtfully returns energy to the work that genuinely requires you, and the leaders you develop through that delegation become part of your legacy before you've even thought about it. Aligning time with legacy. Here is the question at the heart of this chapter. I'd ask you to sit with it rather than answer it right away. What do you want to be remembered for? Not on your resume, not at your annual review, but in the room after you leave, in the memories of the people whose lives your leadership touched. What do you want the texture of your presence to be? What values do you want to model? What kind of difference do you want to make? Now look at this week's calendar. Is the time moving toward that picture? Legacy isn't built on grand gestures. It is built on the accumulated weight of how you spent Tuesday afternoon, Thursday morning, and every ordinary week over years. When your time reflects your values, when you can draw a clear line from how you spend your hours to the impact you are working toward, your leadership shifts from reactive to intentional. You stop feeling like you're just getting through the day and start feeling like you're building something that will outlast it. That shift is available to you. It begins with a single, honest week of tracking and the courage to redesign based on what you find. Declutter communication for persuasive power. The most influential leaders I have ever encountered are not, in general, the most eloquent. They are not the ones with the largest vocabulary or the most polished delivery. They are the ones whose words are stripped of everything unnecessary, so what remains lands with absolute precision. Clarity is not a soft skill. Clarity is power. And communication, like every other domain we've explored, has its own clutter jargon that substitutes complexity for substance, filler words that dilute every statement they attach to, and messages that bury the point in unnecessary context. All of it is noise. All of it is working against the influence you're trying to build. The good news is that clarity can be practiced. Every deliberate simplification in how you communicate is a small step toward authority. The one-sentence pitch. Here is a useful test. Can you express the most important thing you do, the clearest statement of the value you create, in a single sentence? Not a paragraph, not a bullet list, not even a 2-minute summary, one sentence. If you can't, the issue is almost certainly not a lack of information. The issue is a lack of clarity about what actually matters most. The structure that works reliably is this: I help specific people achieve specific result through specific method. That's it. Every word that doesn't earn its place in that sentence is noise that you've been asking others to filter for you. Write several versions. Say them out loud. Notice which one feels the most honest, not the most impressive, but the most honest. The version that sounds like you, not like a pitch. Adjust until you find it. Then let that sentence be your anchor, the center of gravity around which every other message orbits. Storytelling that connects. Facts deliver information. Stories deliver meaning. And meaning is what truly changes minds. When you wrap an insight in a story, a real moment with real stakes and a real human being at the center, something shifts in your listener. They stop processing your words and start inhabiting the situation. They feel the challenge before the solution, which means they genuinely understand why the solution matters, and they remember the story long after they've forgotten the framework. The structure that works is the one that has always worked, because it mirrors the shape of human experience: challenge, journey, transformation. What was the obstacle? What did you actually do? Not what you should have done, not the polished version, but what you actually did. And what changed, not just in the situation, but in you. The personal stories are the ones that land hardest. The moments of genuine uncertainty, failure, or arriving somewhere different from where you planned. Vulnerability is not a weakness in communication. It is the mechanism by which trust travels from one person to another. Don't protect your audience from your humanity. It is your humanity that makes them believe you. Cutting the clutter. Now, for the practical work of removing what dilutes your message. Jargon first. Words like synergy, ecosystem, and leveraging strategic alignment are not, in themselves, terrible. They become problematic when they substitute for actually saying something. They create the impression of precision without delivering it. Test every piece of corporate or industry language in your communication against this question. If I removed this word and replaced it with a plain description of what I actually mean, would the sentence be clearer? If yes, make the trade. Filler words next. Uh, kind of, sort of, just, basically, actually. These are the verbal hedges of a communicator who is not yet confident that their unqualified statement deserves to stand. Here is the thing. Your unqualified statement almost certainly does deserve to stand. The alternative to a filler word is a pause. A deliberate pause, a moment of silence, where a filler used to live, is one of the most powerful tools a communicator can use. It signals confidence. It creates space for what you just said to land before the next thing arrives. Practice this. Record yourself speaking about something you know well, a 5-minute voice memo about your expertise. Then listen back and count the hedges, fillers, and moments when you were preparing to say something rather than saying it. Awareness alone begins to change the pattern. Presence, power, and reading the room. Communication is more than words. It is the full physical presence you bring to every interaction: your posture, your pace, your eye contact, and the way you occupy space. Research has confirmed what leaders intuitively know. An open, grounded physical stance, feet set, shoulders back, chest open, arms uncrossed, not only influences how others perceive you, but also changes your neurochemistry. Before a high-stakes conversation, a presentation, or any moment that requires your full authority, 2 minutes of deliberate physical expansion shifts your internal state in measurable ways. Use it. And train your attention to the other side of every interaction. Communication is not a performance delivered to a passive audience. It is a live, mutual exchange. The crossed arms that appeared halfway through your explanation, the micro-expression of confusion that crossed someone's face before they nodded, the person at the edge of the room who has gone quiet. These signals carry information you can only receive if you're paying attention to more than the content of your own message. Negotiation as clarity in action. Every significant conversation in leadership is, at some level, a negotiation. Not a contest of wills, a process of finding an agreement that serves everyone involved, grounded in genuine clarity about what you need and what you're willing to give. Before any negotiation, know your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. In plain terms, what will you do if this outcome doesn't come through? When you know this clearly, you lose the negotiating posture of scarcity, the slight desperation that comes from treating any one outcome as necessary. You negotiate from choice, not need. And choice projects a quality of groundedness that changes the dynamic of the entire conversation. Set your anchor deliberately. The first number, timeline, or scope offered in a negotiation disproportionately shapes the conversation's center of gravity, and that anchor tends to belong to whoever states it first. Research the range, know your position, and lead with specificity. When it's time to close, close cleanly. State the agreement clearly. Confirm alignment. Ask directly, not, "Does this work for you?" but, "Shall we move forward?" Confidence at the close is not aggression. It is respect for the other person's time and for the seriousness of the work you've both done to get here. Declutter goals to accelerate success. Here is a pattern that consistently appears among high-achieving people who are quietly burning out. They are excellent at pursuing goals. They are less skilled at choosing them. The goals they are working toward may be impressive. They may be visible. They may even be the goals people around them expect them to have. But when you ask these leaders, in a quiet moment, whether the life they are building is the one they truly want, the hesitation before the answer tells you everything. Decluttering your goals is not about limiting your ambition. It is about directing it with enough precision so that every step forward takes you where you want to go. Your non-negotiables. Every leader needs what I call non-negotiables, the personal standards, boundaries, and commitments that serve as guardrails for everything else. They are not preferences. They are the lines that, if crossed in pursuit of a goal, would mean you arrive somewhere you didn't want to be, in a way you didn't want to get there. For one leader, the non-negotiable might be, "I do not compromise my health, no matter how significant the opportunity." For another, "I never work in a way that requires me to be dishonest." For another, "My family gets the best of me, not what's left of me." These differ in content but are identical in function. They are the floor beneath every goal, the conditions under which ambition is allowed to operate. Define yours, not aspirationally, actually. Then filter every goal you're currently pursuing through those standards. Does this path require me to violate what I've identified as non-negotiable? If so, no achievement at the end of it will feel like what you hoped it would. Values alignment. Beyond your non-negotiables lie your core values, the qualities and principles that truly energize you when you feel most alive. These are not the values you believe you should hold or those that merely sound right in a mission statement. Instead, they are the values that are unmistakably reflected in your best work, your strongest relationships, and your most fulfilling days. Name them. 3 to 5 is enough. Then review your current goals and ask, with genuine honesty, does this goal reflect these values? Will pursuing it move me closer to living them or push me further away? Goals rooted in your values sustain themselves. You don't have to manufacture motivation for them. They pull you forward even when the path is hard because the pull comes from something real. Goals that conflict with your values are exhausting in a way unrelated to how difficult the work is. The exhaustion is the friction of internal contradiction, and no amount of discipline can override it indefinitely. The hell yeah or no filter. There is a simple, powerful idea from entrepreneur Derek Sivers that I have seen transform the way leaders approach every commitment they take on. If your answer to an opportunity isn't an enthusiastic yes, treat it as a no. Not because opportunities that don't excite you are bad, but because your time and energy are finite, and every maybe you commit to is a yes displaced from something that would have genuinely lit you up. The accumulated weight of good enough choices, the projects you took on because they seemed reasonable, the commitments you made because it would have been awkward to decline, the goals you are pursuing because they seemed like what you should want, is often the single largest source of the unfocused, slightly hollow feeling that so many ambitious people describe. Test your current commitments against this filter. Not to abandon everything, but to see clearly which ones deserve the full weight of your presence and which ones you are only half present for, because some part of you knows they aren't quite right. Execution. From clarity to momentum. Clarity about goals, however hard won, does not produce results by itself. Execution does. And execution has its own set of enemies, the most common being the ambiguity of large goals that lack a clear beginning. Work in 90-day sprints. Take your aligned, values-grounded, enthusiastically chosen goal and break it into 1/4 of focused effort. Set 3 to 5 milestones over 13 weeks. Block dedicated time on your calendar before anything else fills it. Choose a specific accountability partner who knows what you've committed to and will ask you honestly about your progress every week. And use a simple visual tracker that makes your momentum visible, because visible progress is motivating in a way that invisible progress isn't. And when you inevitably reach a point where a goal no longer serves who you are becoming because you've grown, because circumstances have changed, or because you've learned something that shifts the picture, permit yourself to pivot without guilt. The sunk cost is already spent. The question is never, have I already invested too much to quit? The question is always, knowing what I know now, would I choose this again? If the answer is no, letting go is not failure. It is wisdom at work. Failure, too, is not the opposite of success. It is data. The most consistently successful leaders I know treat every setback as a structured learning exercise, not as evidence of who they are, but as information about what needs adjustment. Build this habit. Do a brief post-mortem after anything that doesn't go as planned. What did I expect? What actually happened? And what do I understand now that I didn't before? This turns every failure from a cost into an investment. Declutter stress to radiate calm authority. Here is something that does not appear in most leadership development curricula but should. Calm isn't a personal wellness goal. It is a leadership asset. When you walk into a room operating from a chronically stressed nervous system, even if you've learned to mask it, even if no one would suspect it, the people in that room feel it. Not as a thought they can articulate, as a subtle shift in the quality of the space, a slight tightening, a faint sense that things are not quite settled. In that quality of space, honest thinking is harder. Creative risk-taking is harder. The candid conversations that actually build trust are harder. Now reverse it. When you walk into a room genuinely grounded, carrying real ease rather than a performance of composure, everything in that space relaxes. People think more clearly. They take more conversational risks. They offer more honest input. They do their best work. You did not say a word. You arrived, and that arrival changed what was possible. This is why managing your stress is not separate from leading well. It is one of the most direct and powerful ways to lead well. Mapping what actually stresses you. Most chronic stress in leaders stems not from occasional acute pressure, which the human system handles reasonably well, but from a background hum of low-grade stressors that are never fully identified, named, or addressed. Start by mapping yours. For 1 week, keep a simple log. Note when you feel most rushed, most anxious, or most mentally foggy. What was happening? Who was involved? What did you feel in your body? What thought was running through your mind? You will begin to notice patterns. The specific kind of meeting that reliably drains you, the hour of the day when your nervous system is most vulnerable, the type of interaction that consistently puts you on the defensive, the story you tell yourself in certain situations that turns a manageable challenge into something that feels existential. These patterns are not weaknesses to be ashamed of. They are a map. And a map is exactly what you need to navigate this terrain rather than be ambushed by it. The worry window. One of the most practical tools I know for managing the ongoing cognitive noise of worry is disarmingly simple. Schedule it. Worry that runs freely through your day is not solving problems. It is consuming attention that could be directed toward the work. The antidote is not suppression. Suppression tends to intensify what it targets. The antidote is containment. Set a 15 to 20-minute window each day, ideally in the late afternoon, when the day's reactive work is winding down. This is your designated time for worry. When a concern arises outside that window, don't engage with it. Write it down and acknowledge you'll give it your full attention later. During the window, review the list. For each item, is this within my control? If yes, identify one specific action. If no, breathe. Deliberately release it. Then close the journal and return to the rest of your life. Over time, this practice trains your nervous system to recognize that worry doesn't need constant access to your awareness, that there is a time for it, that you are not avoiding your concerns, you are managing them intentionally. The result is a measurable quieting of the background noise. Building real resilience. Resilience is not a trait you either have or don't have. It is a capacity built day by day through specific practices. And the most reliable practices for building it are, perhaps unsurprisingly, the most physical. Movement. Regular physical exercise is among the most evidence-based interventions for cognitive performance, emotional regulation, and stress management. Not as punishment, not as a vanity project, as an investment in the neurochemistry of your leadership. Endorphins, dopamine, and serotonin, these are the chemicals of clarity, and movement is one of the most reliable ways to produce them. Whatever form of movement you will actually do consistently is the right form. Start there. Sleep. The research on sleep deprivation and leadership performance is not ambiguous. Without adequate sleep, your ability to regulate emotions, think clearly under pressure, and make sound judgments is genuinely compromised in ways you are often the last to notice. Because sleep deprivation also impairs your self-assessment of sleep deprivation. Protecting your sleep is not soft. It is one of the hardest and most important leadership disciplines available to you. Gratitude. The final resilience practice is the one that most surprises skeptics, deliberately noting daily what is working. Not toxic positivity, genuine recognition that alongside whatever is difficult, there are also things that are whole, functional, meaningful, and good. The brain's default negativity bias is powerful and ancient. It served our ancestors well and serves most modern leaders poorly. A daily gratitude practice does not eliminate that bias, it counterweights it. And that counterweight, built steadily over time, produces a meaningfully different baseline presence. Leading through crisis. All of this preparation finds its most important application in moments of genuine crisis. When the stakes are high, the information is incomplete, and the people around you look to you to be the steadiest thing in the room. The instinct in a crisis is to do more, faster, to demonstrate control through visible activity. This instinct is often exactly wrong. What the moment requires is slowness, deliberateness. The physical act of breathing before speaking, not as a metaphor but as a literal physiological reset, a narrow focus on the single most important next step rather than the overwhelming whole. Communicate in a crisis with honesty and brevity. Here is what I know. Here is what I don't know yet. Here is the step we are taking now. I will update you when I have more. That is not insufficient communication. That is precisely sufficient communication, delivered with the composure that turns the temperature of a room from panic to purpose. After the crisis passes, pause, debrief. Ask what happened, what worked, what didn't, what you want to carry forward, and what you want to change. Every moment of pressure, when reflected on honestly, builds exactly the kind of resilience no calm circumstances can develop. The fire is not the enemy. It is the forge. Declutter your legacy to inspire generations. We have been talking throughout this audiobook about clearing the mental fog, clearing the environment, clearing the draining relationships, clearing the drifting time, clearing the cluttered communication, clearing the goals that don't serve, clearing the distracting stress. And beneath all of that clearing, this is what we were clearing toward. The question of what you will leave behind. Legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's what you leave in others. The most impactful leaders throughout history were not the ones who accumulated the most. They were the ones who, through their presence and practice, changed how the people around them saw themselves. They made others more capable, more courageous, more clear. Their influence didn't diminish when they left the room, but expanded, carried forward in the way the people they led showed up in the next room and the next one after that. That is the legacy available to you, not someday, through the way you lead today. Defining your leadership brand. Your leadership brand is not your LinkedIn headline. It is the impression people form when they think of their experience with you, the feeling they carry after a meeting you attended, the way they describe your leadership to someone who has never met you. It is built not through announcement, but through consistent action, through the daily accumulation of how you show up, what you prioritize, and how you treat people when no one is watching. The foundation of a deliberate leadership brand is a personal mission statement, not a marketing phrase, an inner compass, one sentence that declares who you are, what you stand for, and how you lead. Build it from 3 elements: your core values, the 2 or 3 principles that genuinely guide your best decisions; your unique contribution, what you offer that is uniquely and irreplaceably yours; and your people, who you are here to serve and what you want for them. Then write the sentence: I lead by your values or method to help your specific people achieve the transformation you care most about. Write several versions. Let the one that feels most honest win, not the most impressive, but the most honest. Put it somewhere you'll see it daily. Let it be the question you return to when the noise gets loud. Am I leading from this? Capturing what you're learning. One of the most durable ways to build a living legacy is also among the most underused: documenting your leadership as it happens. Not press releases, not curated success stories, the real thing, the decisions you've made and why, the moments that tested your values, the times you got it wrong and what that revealed, the quiet insights that came after a difficult conversation or a surprising failure. These documents aren't necessarily for anyone else's consumption. They are for you first, to build the self-awareness that comes from seeing your own patterns reflected over time. Eventually, they become the most valuable thing you can offer the people you mentor, not your achievements, but your experience. The texture of the road you walked, the turns you didn't see coming, the things you wish you'd known sooner. Start a leadership journal this week. 1 entry. What did you decide today? What drove that decision? What do you understand now that you didn't at the start of the day? 5 minutes. That is the entire practice. And 5 minutes a day, compounded over years, produces a depth of self-knowledge that cannot be achieved any other way. Mentorship as your living legacy. The most direct path to legacy available to any leader is not building a platform. It is not writing an audiobook or delivering a keynote. It is sitting with one person who is earlier on the road you've walked and giving them the honest, unhurried attention of someone who genuinely wants them to become who they are capable of becoming. Real mentorship is not instruction. It is the practice of asking questions that help the other person arrive at their own wisdom. Sharing not just your successes, but your struggles, because it is in your struggles that a mentee finds the permission and the models they need. Being honest when they are off course, not because you know better, but because you care enough to say the difficult thing. You don't need to mentor 100 people. One person, truly and deeply impacted by your presence, can carry your influence forward for decades in ways you will never fully trace. That is how legacies travel person to person, conversation to conversation, in the quiet moments no one is measuring. Systems that outlast your presence. Beyond the human and personal dimensions of legacy, there is the practical work of making your impact sustainable, ensuring that what you've built can continue to grow without depending entirely on your constant presence to hold it together. This means documenting the processes, frameworks, and approaches that currently exist only in your head. It means identifying the people around you who are ready to grow into greater leadership and beginning to prepare them now, not when the transition becomes urgent. It means building the kind of culture that perpetuates your values, not because you constantly reinforce them, but because they have been genuinely embedded in how the work gets done. Ultimately, the test of great leadership is not what happens when you are present, it is what happens when you are not. If the systems hold, the culture functions, and the people you developed continue to develop others, that is the measure of lasting impact. And give with alignment. Whatever causes, communities, or initiatives you direct your resources toward, do so because of a genuine connection to your values and mission, not because of how it will look. Purposeful giving done consistently and with real conviction is not separate from your leadership legacy. It is one of its most powerful expressions. Lead as if the world is watching it is. You've reached the final chapter of this journey, and I want to be very clear about what that means and what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean you're finished. There is no finish to this work. The practices in this audiobook are not a course to complete and set aside. They are a way of being, one that deepens and expands the more consistently you live it. Every chapter we've covered is a practice, not a destination, a direction, not an arrival. What it means is this: you now have a map. You have a clear picture of the mental clutter that has been running your patterns without your full consent and the practices to interrupt it. You have a framework for creating a physical and digital environment that supports your clarity rather than undermining it. You have tools for navigating your relationships with intention, protecting your energy, building deep alliances, and setting boundaries without guilt. You have a method for reclaiming your time from the urgent and returning it to the important. You have a practice for stripping your communication down to the clarity that actually influences. You have a filter for choosing goals that are genuinely yours. You have a framework for managing stress not around it, but through it, so that your calm becomes one of the most powerful things you bring to every room. And you have a vision of legacy that does not wait for some future milestone to begin. All of this is yours, not to perform, but to live. Your leadership never waited for permission. It was waiting for you. The world is noisier than it has ever been, more distracted, more reactive, more performative. Leadership that is genuinely grounded, leadership that comes from real clarity, real presence, and real care, is, in this environment, extraordinarily rare, and therefore extraordinarily powerful. People are hungry for it, though they don't always know what they're hungry for. They experience it as, finally, someone I can trust. Finally, someone who says what they mean and means what they say. Finally, someone who makes me feel more capable by being in the room with them rather than less. That someone can be you, not a polished version of you. You cleared of what has been in the way. Your influence is not for you alone. Yes, it will change how you experience your work. Yes, it will change how rooms feel when you enter them, how decisions land when you make them, and how people respond to you when you lead. But that is not its ultimate purpose. Its ultimate purpose is what it does for the people who encounter it. The colleague who starts believing in her own ideas because you consistently believed in them first. The team member who finds the courage to have the difficult conversation because he watched you model it. The person in your community who begins to lead because your example gave her permission to believe she could. Those people will influence others. Who will influence others? This is the ripple every truly grounded leader sends out invisibly, irreversibly, across more lives than they will ever know how to count. So here is what I'm asking you to do with what you've received. In the next 24 hours, declutter one thing. your inbox, your self-talk, or one commitment you've been holding on to out of obligation rather than choice. Let the small act be proof that this was not just listening, it was beginning. Over the next 7 days, set one clear boundary. Write the first draft of your leadership mission statement. Have the honest conversation you've been putting off. Let this week feel different because you chose to lead it, not just survive it. Over the next 30 days, sit with someone who is further along this road than you. Share something real, not a highlight, not a lesson polished into wisdom, but the experience, the uncertainty, the pivot, the thing you're still working out. That conversation is an invisible monument, one of many you're already building, whether you're aware of it or not. You were never meant to blend in. You were built to lead, not from a title, not from a stage, from presence, from clarity, from the quiet, immovable, radiating certainty of someone who knows what they stand for and has cleared away everything that stood in the way of standing there fully. The world is noisier than it has ever been. Now more than ever, it needs the clearest version of you. Declutter. Lead. Live. Let the world feel the ripple. Your legacy starts now.